Thank you. I'm so honored to be here with the Minnesota Children's Law Center's annual event. We hope you'll feel everyone's gratitude and hope on this evening of honoring, celebrating, and generous giving to this amazing organization. I'm Patty Wetterling, Jacob's mom, and a relentless child advocate. I've worked my entire life believing in a world where all kids have the right to grow up safe and follow their dreams. That's why we're here tonight, to promote those values. One story I've never really shared publicly was when I was in my freshman year in college. My brother and his friends got into a little bit of trouble, and one of his friends borrowed his father's car and drove over to our house, and the kids, teenage 13, started driving the car. They'd take turns driving around the block till a neighbor reported there's something going on here. So they called the police, and in the process of answering to the police, one of my brother's friends' mom was deemed to not be capable of caring for her children. So the courts were taking these children away, and my parents stepped up and became foster parents to two young boys. So suddenly I'd go home from college and there was an 8-year-old playing hockey in our living room, and it was a whole new world. I didn't experience the court drama and whatever, but I did see the trauma that these kids were going through and the many challenges they had of uprooting and moving in and not really being part of our family, although we wanted them to be, and all of the changes that accompanied that, and then not knowing when would they go back home, if they could go back home, and all of those challenges that many of your clients have to deal with on a regular basis. I also had a babysitter who I found out came from a very troubled family, and she ended up going from foster home to foster home until she turned 18, and we brought her back with us because I wasn't licensed foster care, but we adopted her at that point. So I understand some of the kids' point of view, and I think it's so important that as we view the work here, that we keep in mind that these are children, and they have very childlike dreams like the rest of our kids. I serve on the board for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and it wasn't until 2014 that kids missing from care, foster care or foster homes or group homes, were ever reported as missing. They would just wander off and nobody was looking for them. That's phenomenal. So that law has been changed, and now they're mandated to report so that law enforcement can get involved in the search for these kids and get them off the streets into a safer place quickly. That's good news. We can do better. 31 years ago, I was lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom and was super involved with my kids with basketball and soccer and dance and Girl Scouts and gymnastics, all of the things that the kids can be involved with. And my life was turned really upside down when Jacob was abducted by a masked man in our little town of St. Joseph. And we got a lot of attention for it because of the way the community responded. They collectively stood up and said, no, you can't harm our children, not one of them. And that response was what gave law enforcement the extra push, and it gave the entire state an opportunity to talk about some tough issues. During my first interviews with the FBI and the Sheriff's Department, they asked us, is there anybody who liked Jacob too much, wanted to take him places, do things with him? And then they told us that the motive behind kidnapping is usually for sexual purposes. And I said, what? Who would do that? I couldn't even imagine. It was out of my realm of consciousness that anybody could sexually harm a child, an 11-year-old boy. What is going on here? And we fought against all kinds of exploitation of children. And over the years, the number of missing children hasn't changed much. It's been a pretty consistent number, but the number of kids that are exploited, sexually exploited, has grown exponentially. So there's a lot of work yet to be done. One of the things that happened is that Jacob's story gave other kids permission to come forward and share their story. So I got barraged with letters from children, and they were amazing. It was, Dear Mrs. Wetterling, when I was 4, I was molested by my babysitter. Dear Mrs. Wetterling, Yesterday in school, we discussed your proposal that requires child molesters and kidnappers to report their addresses after they're released from prison. I feel very strongly about this for 2 reasons. First, because I was a victim of sexual abuse on 2 occasions. Second, because I'm 13. She was Jacob's age at that time. Dear Mrs. Wetterling, why didn't people make a big deal about this before Jacob was taken? Why does it always take another kid? I love that. That energy of absolute caring and need to do something we have to keep, because that's what's going to build that world where kids can grow up safe. I became aware of this river of victims that I didn't know existed, and I knew then that this journey was way bigger than just Jacob. Jacob has a very strong energy and a drive for that world. He represents an innocence that we need to get back for children. You know, we have a lot of choices in our lives, but one thing we'd have no choice over is who we're born to. Who are our parents? Where were we born? Do we have money or not? There's a lot of things that these kids are a victim of that they have no say over. My first year teaching, I taught in Southern Maryland, and it was a school for high school dropouts. And these kids, a lot of people had given up on. They came to us from the juvenile court system. And I asked them in interviewing, is there anybody that you could relate to that really cared about you, that offered you hope and support when you were in school? And some of them couldn't think of one caring adult, which was, I found, tragic. But those who did, one teacher, one neighbor, one coach, one person could turn their lives around because they carried that with them. And these kids had an opportunity to get a GED certificate while they were studying to become merchant Marines. And I told them, I will not give up on you if you don't give up on yourself. And they did it. They graduated, got their GED, had a job with the merchant Marines. And it was a turnaround for a lot of kids who were very, very much at risk of going another way. 4 years ago, when Jacob was found, Jerry and I were suddenly hit with court. 5 days after he was found, we were to be appearing in court, and I had no knowledge of a courtroom. I had zero understanding. It was like being dropped in on a foreign planet. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the process. I didn't know the protocol. I didn't know who we were supposed to talk to and who we couldn't. It was absolutely a nightmare, and I can't imagine what it's like to be 10 years old and to be thrown into a need to go to court. That's what this organization does. The Children's Law Center provides these kids a guide and a mentor and somebody who's going to be there and allow these kids to have a voice in the process. It's so incredibly important because the challenge with children and courts are complex, and I didn't understand the process as an adult. They need all the help they can get. There are kids who've already been traumatized, and going to court is going to add another layer. I actually worked with some families where a juvenile he didn't have a guide. He didn't have any support when he went to court, and he got involved with a younger girl, and he was charged as a sex offender, and he was told in court, if you just plead guilty, you will not have to go to jail. You'll just have to be a registered sex offender. And he had no advocate for him, so he did. He's a lifetime sex offender. He's 16 years old, doing what a lot of 16-year-olds do. And the consequences were really dire. A lot of kids who do not have representation have really bad outcomes when they get to court. Children have the right to be represented. And COVID, this world we live in, makes everything worse. Many kids are forced to stay at home where home isn't safe. Maybe the perpetrator is at home or a neighbor, and the one safe place is school, and many of them are not allowed to go to school and get the support, have the guidance counselors, have a place to be safe and to share what their life experiences are. Plus, the kids that are awaiting court often get delayed, further delays, and it's just additional trauma. The work here reminded me of a story, this tribe in Africa. It was called the Mighty Maasai, and they were considered to have warriors that were more fearsome and more intelligent than all others. So it was interesting to read that their one greeting that they have translated is, "And how are the children?" It's still the traditional greeting of the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that they place on children's well-being. Even warriors with no children would answer the traditional answer, "All the children are well." This meant, of course, that peace and joy and prosperity prevail, and that priorities of protecting the young are in place, and that the Maasai people had not forgotten their reason for being, their proper function, and their responsibilities to children. All the children are well means life is good. It means the daily struggles of existence, even among poor people, including the proper care of the young and the defenseless. When Jacob was found, he was wearing his number 11 soccer jersey. And one of my friends at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children had a nephew who wanted to put 11 on his soccer jersey for a tournament that weekend. So our office put together the 11 attributes that represented the world that Jacob knew, and the way we often tell kids what not to do, and don't do this, and don't post pictures and all that, but what do we want them to do? How do we teach them the world that can be better? And I believe that if we were all to strive for these 11 things, that we could build that world that's better and safer and more caring for everyone. And they are. Be fair. Jacob had a really strong sense of fairness. Be kind. Be understanding. Be honest. Be thankful. Be a good sport. Be a good friend. Be joyful. Be generous. Be gentle with others, and be positive. I've gone to many schools around the state, and kids would make posters and flyers, and they'd be in the gym as I was presenting, when you could still gather in gyms. And one school had this blue poster in the back, and it had brown lettering. It kind of looked a little messy until I got up close. And they had written, "Be gentle with others," in Band-Aids. Kids get it. They understand this message. They understand the caring that we need to encourage in today's world. Tonight we're talking about being generous. Children's Law Center of Minnesota is vital to ensuring that all children are well. The children are well. Please make a gift to support the lives and bright futures of Minnesota's most vulnerable children and youth. Thank you for being part of this amazing evening, and together we can build a world that's worthy of its children. Thank you.